Alright, so boom. Today's topic.
Hello, freak bitches. I was saying that marijuana can be your friend and it can enhance your life. But if you take too much, it's such a seductive little creature. Because a little bit of it is like, this is nice, this feels good. But if you get too crazy, especially if you get too crazy with edibles, it'll take you away on this wild journey of paranoia and it'll lock you up. Like, some people just need to take a couple weeks off. Just relax.
That's always a good idea.
It's a good idea, right?
Yeah. I think people underestimate cannabis. I think it can be, like you say, it can really sort of knock you off your center, especially if it's edible. And like all these things, you got to learn how to use it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's basically, that's what you got to do. You have to learn how to use it. But you know, that's my rap. So.
Yeah, it is your rap. But it's a great rap. It really is. It's so important. I think it's so important for people to realize that you got to let, like, regular you, like natural, sober you. It's important to be in touch with that. Like, you don't want to always be high or always be caffeinated or always be anything.
Well, exactly. I mean, people get, to these places and they fail to do a reality check on themselves. I mean, I get emails from people all the time that said, well, life's been pretty weird lately. I took mushrooms 5 times last week. And, and it's like, dude, how about you lay off for a while and give yourself a chance? Because, they tell these stories and it's like the idea of, okay, let's find your center, go back to baseline, lay off the sauce, whatever it is you're taking, and just chill out and try and rediscover your center. It seems like common sense advice, but people don't do that.
It does seem like common sense advice, but common sense is not common. I mean, I think everybody knows that.
Well, yeah.
Typically it's the everyday consumption of a thing that usually makes it harmful, right? Think about it, right? Why do you take caffeine every day? Because you need it to get energy. But can't you rely on your own, just cortisol levels to wake you up and be active? Why do you need caffeine every day? Why do you need to smoke weed every day? Why do you watch porn, for example, every day?
Why?
There's a certain underlying issue that you need to resolve to get over the hump, right? Most of the time, right, if you smoke once or twice a week, you're probably not gonna develop any necessarily addictive, or it won't necessarily harm you negatively, right? But it's the everyday consumption of marijuana in which it starts to impact your life negatively, right? You spend too much money on it, right? Maybe you want to build an emergency fund. Maybe you want to get your own apartment, but the money that you're making is always going towards weed. Or perhaps this one's a bit more like subjective, but in your case, maybe weed, when you consume marijuana, it makes you have the munchies. Or in some people's case, it makes them not eat or want to eat, right? So they may have weight gain goals, or other people may have weight loss goals. You just have to understand your perspective on life and how weed is affecting you in said way, right? So, like I said, I've always said this time and time again, weed is not the issue. It is we humans that abuse things, right? Too much of any good thing is good for nothing. Say it with me. Say it with me. Say it with me, okay? Too much of any good thing is good for nothing. Tolerance breaks. 1 week tolerance breaks. Even if you smoke once or twice a week, go on a 1 week tolerance break. Just periodically, once a month, go on a 1 week tolerance break. And you said the chains of habit are too weak to be felt until they're too strong to be broken. So if you have certain goals in life, or you have a job that requires you to do drug tests periodically, then it may be time to put the cannabis aside for a while, or at least lower your consumption. And again, people always say weed is not addictive. You're talking shit. Like, what are you talking about, right? I understand. There's been a lot of misconception about weed, and for a lot of period of time, weed is harmless compared to the effect of alcohol. Alcohol causes more deaths per year than weed.
Marijuana and alcohol have long been portrayed as relatively similar vices. Based on peer-reviewed scientific research, however, alcohol has been found to pose more severe and oftentimes fatal risks. According to Business Insider, a new study published in The Lancet suggests for people aged 15 to 49 years old worldwide, alcohol was the leading risk factor for death in 2016. Researchers found the more people drank, the more their risk of dying and their risk of cancer rose. A 16-year study of more than 65,000 Americans found that healthy marijuana users were not more likely to die earlier than healthy people who did not use cannabis. As a result, researchers concluded there was no safe level of alcohol consumption, and scientists found there have been 0 documented deaths from marijuana use alone.
I understand that, but that doesn't mean that weed can't negatively affect your life as well. So when people bring up the issues that pertain to weed, they tend to like talk down about those people that struggle with quitting weed, right? The age you started smoking, like how young you were, and how often you smoke. Are you a daily smoker, every other day? And the type of strain that you smoke all affects how likely you are to create a no association to weed and have it be a struggle to quit.
That's all you have to do is look around to realize that.
What is it about people, though, that once they indulge in any sort of, I mean, it doesn't even have to be a substance. It could be an activity, like gambling, for instance. Like, once it gets in your bones, it just seems like you're so compelled to just continue that behavior. And the idea of stopping is almost more painful than the idea of wrecking your life.
This is addiction. This is basically, these things are reinforcing. They activate those pleasure circuits, in the brain, mediated mainly through dopamine, and all of these, I mean, the so-called drugs of abuse, which I think is a terrible word, but, the reinforcing drugs, the pleasure drugs work directly or indirectly through the dopamine circuits, and the dopamine is like your button for pleasure, in the same way that serotonin is kind of on the opposite side. It's your button for more like euphoria, feeling good, but it doesn't have the punch, I guess, which is why people can get addicted to gambling, they can get addicted to sex, they can get addicted to television, all of these things. It doesn't have to be substances, because they all hit those same circuits, except the psychedelics, which don't work on that reward circuitry. They work on a different set of circuits.
But yet, even with those, your behavior patterns can become addictive. And then you can start just doing psychedelics too much, and it's not even the psychedelics that are doing it. It's just this compulsive need to constantly change your state of mind.
Yeah, that's quite true. And if people, the way to use psychedelics is there are many ways to use it, but basically use it thoughtfully. I mean, you can, all the question about recreational use versus spiritual use versus therapeutic use, I mean, these are all ways to approach it. And I am not a person who says you must do it this way, you must do it that way. What I do say is do it from an informed place and approach it thoughtfully, because, I mean, in other words, don't, plan for it. Respect the medicine in a certain way. Use it in a circumstance where you can learn from the medicine rather than have the medicine be sort of a, overlay over whatever else you're doing. I mean, this is something that demands attention, and I think that's the best way to use psychedelics, and for whatever spin.
So essentially, if you are someone who smokes every day, or you smoke usually, so let's say you want to go on a tolerance break, or you want to go 30 days without smoking weed, right? You want to replace the activity of smoking. So arguably one of the best approaches to not only quitting your addiction, but to also replace the activity, which is also important, is to exercise in the morning. Oh hell no! Every day, let's say you were a daily smoker, or you smoke like pretty much the whole week. During your marijuana or THC detox, you want to exercise every morning. I'm not saying go like a full-on workout, but like a 5-10 minute workout. Or if you don't want to do like a HIIT workout, just do yoga. Every morning, have some type of exercise that you did. This will replace the loss of dopamine that you now have due to the fact that you stopped smoking. And the morning workouts will allow you to build a new habit of working out and to still facilitate the rise of dopamine that you now lost from smoking marijuana. Arguably, this is probably one of the best tips in terms of addiction recovery and not relapsing when you stop smoking. This can be applied to even caffeine, right? Those ones where when you work out, you feel good. You feel good after a workout. The hardest part about working out is actually beginning the exercise, or beginning the yoga session.
Get this, by working out, by exercising, by having mild stress on the body, we are training the brain to become more resilient, which is exactly why we feel so good. Stress literally doesn't affect us as much because the BDNF has put this protective layer around the brain cells so they don't get affected as badly. It's truly remarkable, and it actually has effects that stick. So even when you're working out and you feel amazing and then you kind of come down from that workout high, you're still at a baseline that's higher than you were before. Each and every time you work out and you increase that BDNF, you are increasing your brain cells' resilience. So that little bit of stress that you put yourself through is doing amazing things in terms of getting you high, so to speak.
But once you've done it, you feel good. And that's because of the fact that you get a mini dopamine hit, similarly to how caffeine affected you or how marijuana affected you. So this, not only will it help you replace the activity and build a new habit, but throughout the day, you will be less angry or less irritable because of the fact that you had a certain pleasure that happened for you in the morning. Because one of the things that happens when you quit weed is any little thing irritates you. You know, when you smoke, you feel chill, like you're on cloud 9. But once you take it away, now any little thing that happens in your life, it just like it hits different. You know what I'm saying?
Listen.
Why are you talking to me like that then?
I don't know, I'm sorry.
Stop screaming at me.
I'm not screaming at you.
You are. Ain't nothing talking to me. I'm screaming at you anyway.
Okay. Bye, Brianna.
Don't tell me to bye. I'm standing her.
I love you, Rihanna.
Oh no, you don't love me. You don't love nobody. You love your own self. Somebody love you and sorry. You don't tell nobody you sorry. No.
You
So that will also help you with your anger or anxiety a little bit. And speaking of anxiety, right? Big thing, always have lemon. Lemon, if you bite into a lemon or you sniff black pepper, these two things help any anxiety or panic attack that you may have, whether it is weed-induced or just regularly. Biting into a lemon will take you out of your own head and bring you present into the here and now. And another big thing that people struggle with when they are going about quitting weed is the insomnia at night. So perhaps you also use weed to fall asleep, right? So definitely I highly suggest in the evening, have a yoga session in the evening. Yoga for bedtime. If you just search up on YouTube, yoga for bedtime or yoga for relaxation, you'll find a ton of videos that help you facilitate that evening yoga session. And another big thing that affects your ability to sleep is also the lights that is emitted from your phone and the lights in your house. So one of the things you want to get yourself is blue light blocking glasses. These things will prevent your phone or all the lights in your house from negatively affecting your body's ability to produce melatonin, and will block out any of that disruptive light that will affect your sleep. So having exercise in the morning and a yoga session in the evening, these two things will arguably help reduce cravings and the withdrawal symptoms that you'll experience substantially.
Is it spiritual? Is it therapeutic? Is it recreational? Is it shamanic? These are all labels. The important thing is that, you approach the medicine itself. The medicine is the teacher, right? Not the sitter, not the shaman, not the psychotherapist. If they're doing their job correctly, in my opinion, their job is to let you have your encounter with the medicine. And the medicine is what you learn from. They're there to facilitate that. They can intervene if you get anxious or if things go on, make sure, nobody comes to the door, that kind of thing. But basically, it's to facilitate a learning opportunity where you and your teacher, which is the medicine, be it ayahuasca or mushrooms or whatever, can have this intense one-on-one interaction,
I feel like with psychedelics as well as with all these other things we're talking about, any kind of drug, even coffee, alcohol, whatever, and behavior patterns, all these different things. I think one of the things that happens with human beings is you get so far along in your life and these behavior patterns become so like tight grooves that are carved into your psyche. And then as you become an adult, then you start to learn like, oh, there's got to be a better way to handle this. Let me figure out how to do this. And it's almost like getting a car when you're really young and not learning how to drive until you're like in your 20s.
Right.
And so you're just driving this thing, smashing into trees and grinding the gears. And then somewhere along the line, you're like, oh my God, I'm fucking myself up. I have to figure out a way to do this correctly. And there's two different approaches. There's one, the abstinence approach, which is very popular. People say, well, I'm straight edge now. I don't do anything and that's it. And I just do wheatgrass and I run hills and stuff. I'm like, okay, you could do that too. I mean,
right. You can do it.
You definitely can do that too. But I just don't think that there's anything wrong with any of these things. I think there's something wrong with the way we use them. And I think it's one of the inherent problems with things being illegal is that we can't discuss this. We don't have people like you or centers where people can go, where people can become educated on the proper way to use these drugs or medicines, whatever you want to call them, these compounds, and get something out of them that can really be beneficial.
Right. That's exactly right. I mean, I've said this many, many times that, drug education, what they call drug education in this country, is a joke because the whole emphasis is on don't use them. That's absurd. That's like telling an 18-year-old guy full of testosterone, don't have sex.
Right.
Come on, it's built into the genetics. They're going to go for that. What you have to do, what they can't bring themselves to acknowledge in the drug education field is it's not about telling people not to use drugs. It's about teaching people how to use drugs if they choose to, right? I mean, like any other skill, people have to learn to drive. They have to learn to do yoga. They have to learn to do whatever they do. There's an educational process. I tell people many times, you know, my shtick is, there is no such thing as a bad drug. And that's another problem with the dialogue. The badness is projected onto the drugs. The drugs are simply compounds with a certain pharmacology. There's no moral aspect to them. The moral dimension comes in how do people use them. That's where, you know, it's human behavior that's moral or immoral. I say, you know, there's no such thing as a bad drug. Plenty of bad ways to use drugs, you know, but that comes from the person, not the compound.
So I feel like once you do decide to quit weed, or whether it is for a tolerance break, 30-day detox, or maybe you want to quit forever, you feel like it's no longer serving you, part of the process of quitting weed is first of all understanding what are the common withdrawal symptoms you'll experience, such as irritability, insomnia, lack of appetite. If you can't eat while you're trying to quit weed because maybe you were smoking before you ate, and now you can't eat at all, I would highly recommend you start taking fruits, like easily digestible fruits, maybe grapes, watermelon, pineapple, or yogurt, things that still have calories in it, or maybe even a meal supplement like protein powder or something like that. These things will allow you to still consume calories without going completely and having empty stomach, you know what I'm saying? So these are things that you may not have known or may not realize you'll experience, right? So when you have a prior understanding of what you're going to encounter when you decide to quit for whatever reason, maybe drug test or whatever, then you will be better educated, and then you won't be blindsided by the withdrawal symptoms that you experience. If you want more in-depth detail, more in-depth understanding of how all of this affects you and how serotonin, dopamine all make it easier, or in some cases harder, to quit weed, check out my mini course, mini email series in the description and pin comment. You don't want to always be high. I highly recommend you partake in more of the indica strains of marijuana as opposed to sativa. It's just more chill, it doesn't sedate you as sativa typically does, you know what I'm saying? But yo, God bless, much love, peace, and joy. Check out my playlist right here and other related content. Doesn't feed you, don't water it, and too much of any good thing is good for nothing. How are you lot doing today? I'm doing more, saying less, and keeping that same energy. No cap, flip the script, I'm out. Deuces.
Some don't wanna see you get that W. Struggles with the money when it's coming through. They don't wanna see us when they rather see us up on that corner. Running up in blocks, struggling to make ends meet. Best pray to the Father, cause we been living lost when all we really want.